this, I made a poll, and it came overwhelmingly that those who did want my notes were happy to pay just a small amount of money to gain access to them. These are notes that either I've put a lot of care and effort into, or they're drawings that, again, I've put a lot of attention and love into making. I usually annotate all of my drawings as well, and alongside the notes interesting stuff. Let's close this all up and have a look at the heart rate. So these have been made a little bit too large for my liking. So where the patient has a regular heart rhythm, what we're going to do now is have just a quick look at the difference between the heart rate and heart rhythm. So where the patient has a regular heart rhythm, heart rate, HR, can be calculated using the following method. So first of all, count the number of large squares, which we know as being, again we have a annoying ECG sheet that doesn't have markings for the large squares, but we know that a large square contains 5 small squares present in one R to R interval, and the R is, if we take a look at the shape of this, is the tip of the Qrs complex. Makes sense? The R, QRS, and then I always find this of QRS a very easy thing to remember. Q at the bottom, R at the top, S at the bottom again of this very distinctive Qrs complex. So count the number of large squares present within one R to R interval. So from the tip of one R to the tip of another R, how many large squares in between? And then divide this, and divide 300 by this number. So heart rate equals 300 divided by the number of large squares in one R to R interval. So it actually looks like, I see, sorry, my bad. And actually that makes more sense. These are not small squares. That would make this incredibly fast, an incredibly fast ECG. These are the large squares that have just had the small squares removed. So 1, 2, 3, 4 large squares between the tips of each R interval. So 300 divided by 4, 75 beats per minute. That's this person's heart rate. And that is the easy way of calculating someone's heart rate from their ECG. The truth is that usually you will get their heart rate at the bottom of the ECG or at the top of the ECG, just calculated by the machine, but this is a skill you'll probably be asked to demonstrate at some point. So the above calculation is not appropriate for a patient with an irregular heart rhythm. This is because the R to R interval differs significantly throughout the ECG. In this case, a different method is needed, and we can understand why that might be. If this is all over the place, there aren't regular intervals obvious for ourselves, where there is a recurrent pattern of irregularity. That's regularly irregular, or irregularly irregular, where there is total disorganisation. So, in regularly irregular heart rhythms, you will be able to sort of notice a general symmetry along the strip, and this is usually in the differences in time between things like the R to R intervals. So you can mark out several consecutive R intervals on a piece of paper, then move along the strip to check if the subsequent intervals are similar. So in the case of this very blurry image, we can tell that this is irregularly irregular, and that is what we might term as atrial fibrillation in this case. 9 small squares, 15, 12, 10, 10, 11, 8, 11. There is absolutely, or 15 again actually it looks like, there is absolutely no regularity or symmetry even within the irregularity overall of the strip. So yeah, that's irregularly irregular, whereas we might have like 3 and then a sort of a pattern of 3 irregular complexes in terms of the distance between each other, followed by a similar 3. So you'd have like 3, 3, or 4, and 4, and 4, and this would follow a pattern. That's what you might call regularly irregular. So above we can see there's no regularity. If you are suspicious of AV or atrioventricular block, whereby there would be evidence of a lack of any interaction between the atria and ventricles, you can map out the atrial rate and the ventricular rhythm separately, marking the P waves and the R waves. As you move along the strip, you will see if the PR intervals change, if the Qrs complexes are missing, or if there is a complete dissociation between the two. So this is probably a little bit difficult to understand if you don't already know some things we're talking about: P waves, R waves, PR intervals, Qrs complexes, all this sort of stuff. But you can come back to this once we've gone through the parts of the ECG. So we can go through cardiac axis. I think we're going to leave the cardiac axis. It's an interesting thing to talk about. It's basically about the directions of electrical travel, the average electrical direction based on certain electrodes and leads that you get from those electrodes. So these are, and then there's certain deviations that you can notice based on the sort of certain landmarks or certain key things to identify in the ECGs that might give you an idea of deviations, and then there are associated conditions with each of these deviations. But I think if you particularly are interested, you can have a look at the notes, I guess. Let's have a look at the parts of the ECG. I think that's what everyone's really interested in. So this is our classic ECG. I don't even know what you would call this whole thing. This is just one single each of these segments and intervals have times that we would expect them to take in the ECG. So this whole complex, the entire complex from P to T, should take a certain length of time, which we'll go on to talk about in a second. The times between each of these determines your heart rate. So this whole thing here represents one heartbeat, one pump of the heart. Okay? Pumping to the lungs and pumping to the rest of the body. This is what it represents. Okay? It should take a certain length of time. No matter how. I'll say this with some caution. Whether you're sitting down, relaxing or asleep, or you're running, the time it takes for your heart to beat does not differ that much. Okay, it might pump with more force, but the actual electrical impulse that leads to it Qrs Complex represents ventricular depolarization. So from the beginning of atrial depolarization, electrical activity is moving through the heart towards the ventricles in a very synchronized fashion. And so this PR interval should be quite a good indicator for the electrical activity moving between those two sections in a nice, smooth fashion. So in a healthy person, the PR interval should be between 120 or 200 milliseconds, or in decimals that we can understand. Looking back at the ECG strip, 0.12 or 0.2 seconds. So we know that that would be one whole of those big blocks, or 3/5 of one of those big blocks. This equates to 3 to 5 small squares, which are each 0.04 seconds. If we have a prolonged PR interval, and this is why I'm going to split these videos up, because a prolonged PR interval is basically what we call atrioventricular delay, or AV block, atrioventricular block. You've probably heard of AV block if you've done any work in this sort of area. Big or small, AV block is a big sector of interest in vascular health, I suppose, or cardiac health, where there is a prolongation of the PR interval, so it's over 0.2 seconds. This is suggestive of AV block. This is the most important point to remember. Prolonged PR interval. So from here to here, this is longer than 0.2 seconds. You have a heart block of some kind. Okay, PR interval is extended, is prolonged. You have a heart block, or they have a heart block, hopefully the other way around. And then you need to determine what type of heart block you're looking at. And that's when it gets complicated, because you have first degree, third degree, second degree. I don't know why I went about that way. First, second, or third, which is the third is the worst one, that's known as a complete heart block. And that's where we're going to leave it on this video. Okay, we've gone through a lot of stuff today. I'm not now going to overload you with all the information that we can go through about first degree, second degree, third degree, more second degree type 2, and then third degree, because there is a lot to go through. You can have a little read through of this yourself if you're particularly interested now. As I said, I have all of my notes up on Patreon, and I will have this full set of notes up on my Patreon as soon as I can. It will probably be up once this video is out. If not, it will be up the start of next week. It probably won't be up once this video is up. I'll put it in the description, and I will put it at the as a pinned comment as well, just to make sure that you guys are aware. But guys, I hope that you found this useful. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use the end of this video just to run through, for those of you who are still here and interested, what is on my Patreon that I've added, the extra little things that I didn't tell you about. seen some of my videos where I've drawn things or done time lapses or at least just gone through the drawings. So have a look at yourself if you're interested, if you want to check this out before subscribing to Bronze Medical Student. Just a level up from that is Silver Medical Student, which is £4 or $5 a month. It's the same as this, but just a little bit more. First of all, there's no additional content yet for this tier, but I have a lot of things working in the background that I'm hoping to get organised very, very soon. In fact, I could probably start it straight away. I already have a number of presentations that I've delivered, or at least a lot of information that I'm capable of delivering via an online session. Right now, I actually do a lot of virtual teaching with a friend of mine to those in the low years of my degree. I've never really mentioned this before, but I do quite a lot of tutoring. That's one of the ways that I make money, and I like to think I'm quite a good tutor. So if you like the idea, it's just an idea I had quite recently, that we can have online Zoom sessions where I disseminate this sort of information to you live. At first, I think what we might do is we might do a couple of live YouTube sessions. That could be quite fun. And that might give you an idea if you'll actually enjoy them or not, and then you can think about subscribing to the Silver Medical Student. But I was thinking maybe once a month, maybe twice a month, we could do these online sessions, and I was thinking that those who are subscribed to Silver Medical Student or above will be eligible to join those Zoom or Microsoft Teams sessions, but this is stuff we can organise on Discord down the road. Then we have Gold Medical Student, exactly the same as Silver, except it's just a little bit more if you want to. You contribute just a bit more, or if you want to have a say on the content we're going to cover in those online sessions. So if you actually want to ask me to cover a certain topic in one of these online sessions, whether I do it as a live stream on YouTube, or whether it's going to be one of these sort of face-to-face on Zoom things, you can subscribe to this one, and that is £6.50 or £8 a month. Then I have two new tiers which I'm interested about, but it depends if you guys fancy it. They're really just there if you guys see it and think, oh yeah, you know what, let's give that a go. First is my video request, which I've never done before. £17 a month. Well, it's more of a one-off actually, but £17 for a video request, or $22 if you want to pay by PayPal. It's a small discount of $20 because Patreon take a cut from each of these things. So $20 really for a video request. If you want me to cover a particular scientific or medical topic, we can discuss it on Discord or on Patreon chat if you want to. But yeah, I would love to take video requests, and if you want one, it's £17 or $20. And the reason for that price is because obviously I'm quite busy with my actual uni work. So if there's a topic that you guys want me to research and prepare for a video for you, I obviously need to take time out of my day to do that. So actually it's probably quite a low amount for the amount of time I would need to prepare for something like this, because each of these videos, each of these note takings take a good few hours, maybe 4 or 5 hours to do. Yeah, that might be quite low, but videos are videos and education is education for me. So it's just a small monetary compensation for that amount of time. And my final one, it might look like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money. It's for those who are really interested. Like I said, I'm an experienced tutor in the UK. If you want one-to-one sessions, tutoring, actual proper tutoring, or even just a sort of scientific discussion on a particular topic for 1 hour, so a 1 hour session, £57.50 a month, or just one-off really, £57.50 or GCSE and A levels, which is like college level or high school level in America, and that is a much lower level of education than teaching stuff from uni. So from university. So that is why if I was to prepare for something like an actual one-on-one session, this is the kind of payment I would expect for that. It would take a lot of preparation, and I'd want to make sure that it is really, really good. So yeah, if you guys really are interested in the stuff that I'm teaching, if you're at university or you really want to, if you're maybe first year of medicine or something, and you really want one-on-one tutoring from me for face-to-face over Zoom or Microsoft Teams, there's the option for you. And obviously you don't have to just join straight away. You can get on Discord and send me a private message and we can sort it all out one-on-one. So guys, that is my rundown of the Patreon. I hope that that makes sense, and I hope that you found this video interesting and enjoyable. I'll see you again very shortly